Welcome to a haunting journey into the shadows of history, where the faint glow of candlelight in a 16th century French chamber reveals a solitary figure, his quill etching prophecies that would resonate across centuries. This is the realm of Michel de Nostradamus, better known as Nostradamus, born on the 14th of December in the year 1503, in the quiet town of Saint-Rémy de Provence. A physician by trade, an astrologer by passion, and a prophet by reputation, he penned Les Prophéties in the year 1555, a collection of quatrains in Latin, Greek, and Old French that defy easy interpretation. His words have foretold the fall of kings, the blaze of cities, the rise of empires, and the end of the world itself, leaving scholars and believers in awe. As the year 2025 draws near, his visions of war, technological marvels, and cosmic doom cast a long shadow over our present. Was he a vessel for divine insight, or a master manipulator of a fearful age? For the next hour, we'll delve into 12 of his most striking prophecies, tracing their echoes from the past into a future yet to be written. Before we begin, smash that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. Perhaps it'll guard you against the mysteries ahead. Let's step into the abyss together. Part 1. The Death of King Henry II, a prophecy written in blood, in the stillness of a candlelit chamber. Sometime in the mid-16th century, a man sat hunched over parchment, his quill moving with eerie determination. That man was Nostradamus. From the silence emerged a prophecy obscure, yet terrifying, that would echo across generations. In the 1st century, 35th quatrain, he penned these chilling words: "The young lion will overcome the older one. In a single battle he will pierce his eyes. Through a golden cage, 2 wounds and a cruel death." At the time, it was just another cryptic stanza in a sea of riddles. But in the year 1559, those lines would come violently to life in the heart of France. King Henry II, a formidable ruler and seasoned warrior, hosted a grand celebration, festivities laced with wine, pride, and pageantry. As part of the entertainment, the king himself took up a lance for a ceremonial joust against the young Count of Montgomery, a friendly match. They said, harmless tradition, but fate had a darker script in mind. The king, the older lion, wore a shining gilded helmet, his golden cage. As the horses thundered forward, the young lion struck. Montgomery's lance shattered upon impact, a deadly shard breaking through the visor and piercing the king's right eye. A second fragment buried itself deeper, causing internal damage no physician could mend. Blood, panic, and stunned silence followed. Henry clung to life for 10 excruciating days before slipping into death on the 10th of July, 1559. The royal court descended into chaos, not just over the loss of a king, but over the terrifying realization Nostradamus had seen this coming. 2 wounds, a pierced eye, a golden cage, a cruel death. Line by line, the prophecy had played out with haunting accuracy. Whispers spread like wildfire. Was it coincidence, a lucky guess, or had Nostradamus truly seen the moment of death written in the stars? Whatever the truth, the death of King Henry II was more than a tragedy. It was a warning, a chilling sign that the quatrains of Nostradamus were not just poetic riddles, but glimpses into the machinery of fate itself. As we turn the page to the next prophecy, one can't help but wonder how many more of his visions have yet to unfold. Part 2. The Fall of Napoleon in Russia, a march into the white abyss. In the cryptic verses of Nostradamus, history often seems to speak before it happens. One such vision, buried in the folds of his prophecies, foretold not only the ambitions of a conqueror, but the brutal collapse of an empire beneath ice and fire. The prophecy reads, "A great army will invade Russia. The invaded will destroy a city. The main force will counterattack. The defeated will die on the white land." At first glance, just another veiled stanza, too vague to warrant fear. But then came the year 1812. Napoleon Bonaparte, Emperor of France and master of much of Europe, believed no land could resist the thunder of his Grande Armée. Over 600,000 soldiers followed him eastward, a steel tide set to drown the Russian Empire. And at first, it seemed unstoppable. Cities fell, resistance crumbled. By September, Moscow itself lay within his grasp. But Russia had not surrendered, far from it. The citizens set fire to their own sacred city, denying Napoleon the shelter, food, and victory he expected. The flames of Moscow lit the night sky, a desperate act of self-destruction foretold centuries before. Then came the cold. The Russian winter descended like a curse. As the temperature plummeted far below freezing, the landscape transformed into a merciless wasteland, the white land of Nostradamus. Horses froze mid-step, soldiers collapsed in snowdrifts, never to rise again. Frostbite, starvation, and relentless Russian attacks turned the retreat into a nightmare of death and silence. By the time December arrived, only a fraction of Napoleon's army remained. Over 400,000 men had perished, swallowed by the snow, the cold, and the cruelty of miscalculation. And somewhere, in the dust of centuries past, Nostradamus had written it all down. Did the seer truly gaze across time to witness one of history's greatest military disasters? Or did the human mind bend his words to fit the chaos of the past? The line between prophecy and poetry blurs yet again, and the question remains: how could he have known? And if he saw this, what else did he see? Part 3. The Rise of Napoleon. From a narrow island to an empire's throne. Before the snow and silence of Russia swallowed his ambitions, Napoleon Bonaparte's story began not in grandeur, but in shadows. In the words of Nostradamus, penned centuries earlier, a great emperor will begin with a humble position and quickly grow strong. A narrow place will become a center when he seizes supreme authority. At first, the quatrain seemed like an enigma without a key, but in the late 18th century, its pieces began to fall into place on a windswept island far from the heart of European power. Corsica, a rugged, mountainous speck adrift in the Mediterranean Sea. There, in the year 1769, a child was born to a modest family, with little to his name but ambition. His name, Napoleon. Raised in obscurity, speaking Italian more fluently than French, young Napoleon did not appear destined for greatness, yet something stirred within him, an insatiable hunger for mastery, for glory, for control over chaos. He entered military school, excelled in strategy, and rose through the ranks with a speed that left his peers in awe. France was in turmoil. The revolution had torn through the old order like a wildfire, and in its ashes, power lay scattered, waiting to be seized. In the year 1799, Napoleon struck. With a single, calculated coup, he dismantled the existing government and installed himself at the helm. Just 5 years later, he placed a golden crown on his own head and declared himself Emperor of France. The world watched in disbelief. From a narrow, forgotten island, Napoleon had carved a path to supreme authority, turning Corsica from an afterthought into the symbolic origin of an empire that would shake the continent. And once again, Nostradamus had written the outline before history filled in the colors. How could the seer, cloaked in 16th century robes, have envisioned a boy born 2 centuries later, rising from nothing to command kings? Coincidence, or did his visions pierce through time like light through fog? As with every fulfilled prophecy, the mystery deepens not only of what Nostradamus saw, but how he saw, and if he foresaw Napoleon's rise and fall. What other empires, what other men, still lie hidden in the folds of his visions? Part 4. London ablaze. The fire that Nostradamus warned of London had seen plague, war, and rebellion, but nothing prepared its people for the inferno that arrived in the year 1666. It began without warning. Just after midnight on the 2nd of September, a simple spark from a bakery on Pudding Lane escaped control. The winds of fate quite literally fanned the flames. Within hours, the blaze leapt from rooftop to rooftop, devouring everything in its path. Wodenhouses, tightly packed streets, tar-covered walls, fuel for a fire that refused to die. By the time the last ember died on the 6th of September, over 13,000 homes, 87 churches, and St. Paul's Cathedral lay in ruins. Nearly 70,000 people were left homeless, wandering a city cloaked in smoke and silence. And centuries before this catastrophe, Nostradamus had written these haunting lines: "The blood of justice will cover London. The city will burn in the year 66. The lady will lose her high estate, and many places will be destroyed." It's not just the mention of 66 that chills the spine, it's the tone, the imagery, the sheer weight of what unfolded. Some say the lady symbolized London's pride, or the fall of noble estates reduced to rubble. Others wonder if justice's blood was metaphorical punishment for past sins, or simply chaos unbound. Unlike wars or assassinations, this was not a human act of cruelty, but something wilder, elemental, biblical. Could Nostradamus have truly foreseen this fiery reckoning, Or have the flames of history reshaped his words to fit their narrative? In the charred remains of the old city, one question lingered like smoke in the air. Was this just a fire, or fate fulfilled? Part 5. Nostradamus and the night he predicted his own death. Prophets speak of kings and empires. They warn of wars, of flames, of fate reshaped. But what happens when the seer turns his gaze upon himself? As dusk fell on the 1st of July, 1566, Nostradamus sat in quiet reflection. The man who had spent a lifetime peering into the swirling currents of time was now nearing the final hour of his own journey. With calm certainty, he turned to his loyal secretary and said 6 words that would echo through the ages: "I shall not wake come morning." There was no sign of illness, no fever, no failing breath, just a calm, eerie acceptance. And true to his word, by sunrise, Nostradamus was gone, slipped silently into death. Without agony or alarm, his body lay undisturbed, his expression serene, as though he had merely walked into another realm, one he'd seen many times before. For centuries, scholars have debated, was this one last coincidence in a life of strange timings, or a final, perfect prophecy? Unlike his quatrains cloaked in riddles and open to interpretation, this was direct, clear, unmistakable. He had not just predicted the year or the day, but the very night his life would end. Was it divine foresight, or had he simply felt something stirring in the quiet chambers of his heart, something no doctor could detect, but he, the chronicler of destinies, could? This moment blurs the line between intuition and supernatural insight. When the prophet's final vision is his own death, one must ask, did Nostradamus merely read the stars one last time, or had death itself whispered his arrival in a language only the seer could understand? Part 6. When the grave spoke back. The crypt lay undisturbed for over 2 centuries, sealed in silence beneath the sunburnt stone of Salon de Provence. But in the spring of 1791, silence gave way to footsteps. It was a time of revolution. When mobs ruled and superstition walked hand in hand with violence, a group of looters drunk on wine, and rumors broke into the Church of the Cordeliers. They claimed it was curiosity. Others whispered madness. But what they sought was not treasure. It was him. They pried open the ancient coffin of Michel de Nostradamus, the seer of shadow and fire. The heavy lid groaned. Dust coiled in the air, and there he was. Bones, crumbled cloth, and between those skeletal hands a metal plate, inscribed upon it 2 words, May 1791. The very month and year the tomb was opened. Panic broke the bravado. Some fled. One reportedly fainted. Even the most skeptical could not explain it. Had Nostradamus foreseen his grave would be desecrated? Had he left a message for the violators, a whisper from the dead? Historians have debated the plate's authenticity. Was it a plant? A hoax? But those who were there, those who heard the echo of the coffin lid crack, believed. They spoke of a strange pressure in the air, of candles blowing out without wind. And though the bones were returned and the tomb resealed, the memory lingered, not just of a grave disturbed, but of a prophecy that reached beyond death. Because when a prophet tells you the day you'll disturb his slumber, and then waits for you there, the question is no longer whether he saw the future. The question is, how far did he see? Part 7. The day the sun went silent. The 11th of August, 1999. A day when the sun vanished at noon, and daylight was swallowed by shadow. Across Europe and Asia, millions stood still, heads tilted skyward. Silence fell like a curtain. It was the last total solar eclipse of the millennium, an astronomical marvel wrapped in mystery. But for those who had read Nostradamus, it was more than an eclipse. It was a prophecy unfolding in real time. Centuries before, in the 10th century, 72nd quatrain, the seer wrote, "In the 7th month of 1999, a great king of terror will come from the sky." At first glance, the date appears mismatched. The eclipse came in August, not July, but in the old Julian calendar, once used in France, the 11th of August was the 7th month, and that king of terror, to some, it was the moon itself, blotting out the sun like a silent tyrant in the heavens. Cities dimmed, birds fell quiet, the sky turned a deep, unnatural gray. For a fleeting few minutes, it felt as if time held its breath. Scientists called it beautiful. Mystics called it a warning. Skeptics called it coincidence. But the words of Nostradamus, written over 400 years before, refused to be ignored. Was he describing a cosmic spectacle that would stun the world, or was the king of terror yet to come? Hidden behind symbolism and starlight, whatever the truth, that day the world watched the skies, and for just a moment, Even the most grounded among us wondered, could the stars truly speak? Part 8. Fire in the Sky. The Fall of Challenger. The 28th of January, 1986. Florida's morning sky was a crystal blue. The nation stood still as millions watched the launch of Space Shuttle Challenger, its 7th mission, a symbol of American ambition. On board 7 astronauts, including Krista McAuliffe, the first civilian teacher bound for space. It was meant to be a lesson for the world. Instead, it became a tragedy burned into memory. Just 73 seconds after liftoff, a white-hot flame breached the fuel tank. In an instant, the shuttle erupted a fire, tearing through heaven, scattering debris across the Atlantic. There were no survivors. Centuries earlier, Nostradamus had written a chilling line: "A fire will tear through heaven as the divine messenger ascends." Some believe this is no coincidence. The shuttle, our divine messenger, bearing human hope skyward, was consumed by fire, exactly as described. Skeptics call it metaphor twisted to match disaster. Believers see it as proof, a 16th century prophet glimpsing the agony of modern flight. But even without prophecy, the image endures, a trail of smoke clawing the sky, a nation's dream, shattered midair, and a question that never quite fades. Did Nostradamus truly see it coming, or do we, in grief, search for meaning where only silence remains? Part 9. The Third Great War. A future written in ashes. He saw it not as a flicker of chaos, but a storm of steel and smoke stretching 3 decades long. Nostradamus warned of a war unlike any before, a Third World War, beginning around 1999, erupting in the early 21st century, one that would bleed across borders and burn through generations. His visions painted Europe in flames, with France at its heart. He spoke of great suffering, of cities reduced to rubble, Paris under siege, the Eiffel Tower framed not by twilight, but by black smoke. Though history has not yet branded this war in our timeline, its shadows creep ever closer. Middle Eastern flashpoints, Eastern Europe shaking beneath old wounds, nations arming faster than they speak of peace, and above it all, a silence, like the moment before the storm. Is this prophecy simply delayed, waiting for its spark, or have we already stepped into its opening act? Nostradamus gave no date of triumph, only the promise of a fragile peace rising from ruin. And perhaps, just perhaps, that's the real message, not the war he saw, but the warning we still have time to heed. Part 10. The Transformation of Humanity Through Technology, a Prophecy of Synthetic Souls. He did not see machines, he saw men forgetting what it means to be human. In his cryptic verses, Nostradamus whispered of a time when flesh and circuit would intertwine, when life would stretch beyond 2 centuries, not by miracle, but by manipulation. He foresaw brains laced with metal, thoughts no longer private, guided by invisible code. A new race, he wrote, engineered, not born, their essence shaped in labs, not wombs, their DNA rewritten like poetry in a forgotten tongue. What becomes of the soul when memory can be downloaded? What becomes of will when algorithms predict every choice? The prophets of today call it progress, Neuralink, AGI, synthetic biology. Yet his warnings ring louder. Longer life does not mean deeper life. This is not merely an evolution, it is a crossroads between ascension and artificiality, between wisdom and obedience, between freedom and programming. Are we becoming gods of our own design, or prisoners of a perfection we do not understand? The question remains: when the machines learn to dream, will we still remember how to feel? Part 11. The Geographical Shift of the Earth. When the bones of the world break, he saw the Earth not as a rock, but as a living being, and he saw it writhe. Nostradamus spoke of deserts swallowed by water, coastlines vanishing like breath on glass, and the poles bleeding ice into the sea. The Gobi would drown, California would fall into the ocean's jaws, and the Arctic, once crowned in white, would become a memory. He called it not disaster, but correction, as if nature had grown weary of man's trespass. Now, the signs gather like storm clouds. Tides climb higher each season, swallowing homes with the patience of centuries. San Francisco's streets shimmer with rising water and flame. The glaciers retreat, not in silence, but with a roar only satellites can hear. The Gobi, too, stirs, once still and lifeless. Now it shifts with strange rains and southern winds, not dying, but remembering. Was this a warning or a lament, a plea for change, or a prophecy that change will come whether we act or not? Perhaps the earth does not end with fire or frost, but with a reshaping, where cities become seabeds, and deserts become oceans. In Nostradamus's vision, we are not victims, we are witnesses. Part 12, the end of the world in 3797, when the heavens fall silent. He looked farther than any man had dared, beyond kingdoms and empires, beyond war and peace, beyond even the bones of civilization, to the year 3797. There, Nostradamus saw the final breath of the world, not in whispers but in fire, a sky torn open by light, a sun no longer steady, or an ancient stone from the stars, falling not like a gift but a verdict. He did not name the destroyer, he simply called it the end. No screams, no refuge, only silence. Rising from oceans boiled to steam, and mountains shattered like glass, the memory of mankind, erased in one celestial exhale. And yet he wrote it down, not as despair, but as a seed, buried deep in parchment. For us, for those who would read it centuries before the last dawn, was it madness or mercy imagination, or the echo of a voice beyond stars, perhaps in his lonely chamber lit by flickering candles? He did not see the end to terrify, but to remind us that time is fragile, and fate always listens. Conclusion, reflections beyond the veil. As the final page turns, Nostradamus remains more than a prophet. He is a riddle etched across centuries. His verses ripple through time like whispers in a dark corridor, where past, present, and future collide. From kings pierced in tournaments to empires born in obscurity, from cities set aflame to rockets shattered mid-heaven, his visions trace both our rise and our ruin. And beyond the veil, he speaks of a tomorrow shaped by machines, of continents drowned, of stars that one day fall. Are these glimpses a warning or invitations? Is fate unchangeable, or does it bend beneath our choices? Perhaps. In reading him, we do not find answers, but the courage to ask better questions. So, what do you believe? A roadmap to the end, or poetry dancing with coincidence? Let us know in the comments. If these echoes from the past stirred something in you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and join us as we dive deeper into the shadows that shape our world. Until we meet again, keep your eyes on the unseen, and your thoughts just beyond the edge of now, because sometimes the future watches us, too.